I never expected a single moment to change everything, not in 1,000 lifetimes. And yet, there I was, standing in the corner of my sister's living room, frozen. My heart pounded. My hands shook. The words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. She's marrying him? And you're not invited? I blinked, sure I had misheard. But the way my mother's eyes avoided mine, the way my sister's lips trembled as if caught between shame and defiance, it all made sense. Only it didn't. How could she do this? How could my own family decide, without a word, that I didn't belong at the most important day of her life? Seconds before this, the world had felt ordinary. I had been sipping my coffee, thinking about the day ahead. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, golden and gentle. My sister had laughed at some joke I didn't catch, and the sound had made me feel light, safe, like everything was normal. That moment was gone now, shattered. I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. My mind raced, trying to grasp the impossible. Every memory of us together, the birthday parties, the late-night talks, the shared secrets, flashed like a cruel slideshow. And now, in an instant, it all felt like it had been erased. Why? I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. No one answered. There was only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly, I wanted to disappear. I wanted the world to swallow me whole and take me far away from this sudden, unbearable truth. I remember standing there, staring at the invitation in her hand. The glossy card, the careful calligraphy, the photo of her smiling with him. It felt like a betrayal carved in gold. My sister had wanted to make this perfect, and somehow that perfection excluded me. I wanted to run. I wanted to bolt from the house and never come back, but I couldn't. Something inside me held me there. A quiet, stubborn voice that said, "You're not gone. You're still here. You're still you." The air between us thickened. My mother fiddled with her ring, a nervous tick I'd never noticed before. My sister's gaze dropped to the floor, the corners of her mouth tight. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was louder than any words could have been. I thought of all the small moments that had led here, the inside jokes that now felt like relics, the shared nights of laughter, the trust I had taken for granted. And suddenly, it was gone. I felt unmoored, like the ground beneath me had vanished. And yet, as the shock rippled through me, a new awareness took hold. This wasn't the end. Maybe it was painful, maybe it was humiliating, but it wasn't the end. Not for me. Not yet. I clenched my fists. I drew in a breath and held it. The world outside continued as usual. Birds chirped. Cars hummed by. The sun still shone. But inside, I was awake in a way I hadn't been before. I was seeing things clearly. The betrayals, the secrets, the truths that had been hidden under smiles and polite conversation. They were all there, right in front of me. And now, I couldn't ignore them. I looked at my sister. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. I didn't see malice there. I saw fear and maybe guilt, but also a determination that had pushed me out of the equation. And then I realized something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She thought she could have this day without me. She thought I wouldn't show up. She thought I would quietly disappear. But I wasn't disappearing. Not this time. I turned away from the kitchen, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the car keys. My reflection in the mirror by the door caught my eye. My face was pale, my eyes wide, but there was something else there too. Something fierce. Something calm in its own way. I didn't know exactly what I would do. I didn't know if I would confront her or walk into that wedding with my head held high, or simply make a silent statement by being there. But I knew one thing. this wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning of something I hadn't dared to imagine. And as I slid my hand around the steering wheel and felt the engine roar to life, I realized the truth. Today, everything would change. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, unstoppable way. And when I arrived, the world wouldn't see the same person that had left the kitchen moments ago. The drive to the wedding felt longer than it should have. The streets blurred, the sunlight bouncing off the pavement, but my mind wasn't on the scenery. It was on the past, on what had been, and what had been lost. I remembered the morning my sister had first shared her excitement about meeting someone new. She had been radiant, her eyes sparkling in a way that made the room feel brighter. "You have to meet him," she had said, bouncing on her toes like a child who had discovered a secret treasure. "He's amazing." I had smiled. "You always say that," I joked. "Just promise me you'll be honest with me, okay?" Her face had softened. "Always," she whispered. "You're my sister. You're my family. Nothing will ever change that." But those words echoed hollowly now, because here I was, hours from the wedding, realizing that everything had changed. I thought of all the years we had spent together, the late-night talks, the shared secrets, the laughter that could make even the dullest day shine. And suddenly, I understood how fragile it all had been. I thought of my mother, too. Her voice had always been warm, comforting. She had been the kind of parent who said, "We're a team," and I had believed her. I had believed we were all on the same side. But betrayal, I realized, often wears a gentle mask. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a choice, quiet, almost invisible, until it hits you like a thunderclap. Flashbacks came unbidden as I drove. I remembered a dinner not long ago. My sister had leaned toward me, eyes gleaming with excitement. "You have to help me pick the wedding dress," she had said, holding up 2 swatches of fabric. I had nodded eagerly. "Of course, I know I'll help." That night, I had felt included, important, loved. It seemed so ordinary, so perfect, and yet something had been brewing behind the smiles, something I hadn't seen. Another memory, a quiet conversation with my mother in the kitchen just weeks before the invitations were sent. She had said gently, stirring tea, "I know you're worried, but sometimes we have to let people make choices, even if they hurt us." I had frowned. "What are you talking about?" She had hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You'll see. You'll understand one day." At the time, it had sounded like wisdom. Now, it felt like a warning I hadn't listened to. The more I thought back, the more pieces fell into place. The way my sister had avoided certain topics. The way my mother had quietly encouraged decisions I didn't fully understand. The subtle shift of loyalty, the tiny betrayals that seemed harmless at the time. It all led here, to me, standing outside a wedding that once felt like it would include me, now realizing I had been quietly left out. And yet, in the middle of this ache, a strange clarity emerged. Betrayal, I realized, wasn't always about anger or cruelty. It was about choice. It was about priorities. And it was also about perception. Sometimes people didn't intend to hurt you. Sometimes they just didn't notice the consequences of what they were doing. I shook my head, trying to push away the swirl of emotions, but one memory refused to leave me. A week before the engagement party, my sister had slipped a note into my hand. It read, "I hope you'll be happy for me." The handwriting had been careful, almost formal. I had felt warmth, thinking she trusted me enough to share it privately. But now I realized the note had been more of a shield than an invitation, a gentle way to let me know she had made her choice whether I was ready or not. That thought hit me hard. I had been blind to the small signals, the hints, the tiny fractures that had been growing beneath the surface for months. And yet, the realization wasn't entirely painful. It was empowering, because finally I could see the truth. Finally, I could understand. The wedding hall appeared at the end of the street. Its white walls gleamed in the afternoon sun, flowers spilling over the balcony, music faint but lively. I slowed the car, took a deep breath, and felt the quiet determination settle inside me. I remembered the last thing my sister had said before I left my apartment that morning. "Just come," she had said, her voice soft. "I need you there, please." I had nodded, though inside I still wrestled with hurt and confusion. I hadn't understood it then, but now I did. She hadn't realized how much her choices had excluded me. She hadn't known that one decision could shake the foundation of everything we once shared. And as I parked the car and stepped out, I noticed something strange, something I hadn't expected. A small envelope, tucked under the windshield wiper. My name was written on it in familiar handwriting, elegant and precise. I picked it up, fingers trembling slightly. The envelope felt heavy in my hand. I could hear my heart thudding. And as I opened it, a single folded piece of paper slipped out. My eyes scanned the words. It wasn't a note of apology. It wasn't a casual reminder of love. It was a clue, a secret I didn't know, something that changed how I understood the past and maybe how I would face the future. I froze. Because in that moment, I realized this wedding wasn't just about celebration. It was about truth. And I was about to discover just how deep that truth ran. The wedding hall's doors loomed in front of me. White pillars glimmered in the afternoon sun. Guests milled about, laughing, adjusting dresses and ties, carrying trays of champagne. Music floated through the air, light and cheerful. It was a perfect scene of celebration, and I was about to enter it alone. I paused. The envelope from my sister's car sat heavy in my hand. I didn't rush. I let the sunlight warm my face, let the sounds of laughter wash over me. The secret in that paper had shifted something inside me. Hurt had been replaced by clarity. Confusion had been replaced by purpose. I had been blindsided once, but I would not be caught off guard again. I stepped inside. The murmur of conversation stopped for a fraction of a second as eyes flicked toward me. Not with shock or scorn, just recognition. I smiled faintly, keeping my posture calm and confident. I didn't need to announce myself. My presence alone was enough. The hall smelled of fresh flowers and sweet desserts. Guests glanced my way, whispered softly, and returned to their celebrations. I walked slowly, letting every step count. The bride had turned. My sister's face lit up with surprise, confusion, and a hint of guilt. She had assumed I would stay away. She hadn't expected me to arrive fully myself. "Hey," I said softly, keeping my tone light. She blinked. "I didn't think you'd come." "I told you I would. I just didn't know you'd assume otherwise." She nodded, words failing her. That small exchange, simple and calm, was already a kind of victory. No shouting, no confrontation, no public scene. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I had noticed everything, understood everything, and wasn't cowerless anymore. I took a seat near the front, close enough to see everything unfolding. I let myself observe the laughter, the toasts, the moments between the bride and groom. But I wasn't just watching, I was calculating. Not in a cruel way, not in a way meant to humiliate anyone, but I was thinking strategically. Every glance, every comment, every small expression revealed layers I hadn't noticed before. And then I spotted it. My mother, talking quietly with a cousin I hadn't seen in years. She smiled, but there was tension in her shoulders. My father, standing nearby, kept glancing toward the entrance as if expecting something. Their casual composure wasn't as solid as it seemed. They had made choices, yes, but they had not thought I would respond with poise and patience. I remembered the note in my hand. I opened it once more, scanning the words carefully. It wasn't accusatory, not at all. It was a reminder, a hint, something my sister hadn't realized she had left for me, a truth buried beneath the wedding preparations and polite smiles. And as I read it, I realized how I could act, not with cruelty, but with fairness, not with anger, but with balance. Balance. That was the word that settled over me like a calm tide. I didn't need revenge that hurt others. I didn't need to punish anyone. I needed to restore the equilibrium that had been disrupted. I needed to be seen, respected, acknowledged, and I could do that simply by being deliberate, by holding myself with dignity, by letting subtle truths reveal themselves without me saying a word. I caught my sister watching me again. She frowned slightly, as if sensing something shifting, though she didn't know what. That small flicker of uncertainty gave me hope. I didn't need confrontation. I didn't need drama. She would begin to understand, in her own time, what had changed. She would see the quiet strength I had cultivated from betrayal. During the speeches, I listened carefully. Every compliment, every toast, every anecdote offered a piece of insight. My sister laughed at the wrong jokes. Guests praised the groom in ways that made her beam. I noticed the moments she sought approval without realizing it. I noticed her mother glancing around, checking reactions. Everything was a clue, every smile a signal. And then, near the end of the ceremony, I saw it. The look on one of the groom's friends' faces, furtive, uncertain. A small slip, a misstep that would have gone unnoticed if I weren't paying attention. That one glance told me more than 100 polite conversations. It told me that not everything in this picture-perfect wedding was as flawless as it seemed. There were cracks, and those cracks would guide me. I leaned back in my chair and allowed a quiet smile to form. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't involve anger or humiliation. It would be clever, moral, and precise. It would restore what was lost: recognition, trust, and dignity. I would show that I was not to be overlooked, not to be underestimated, not to be excluded. And as I adjusted my posture and looked toward my sister again, I noticed the first subtle sign that she was sensing it. She had caught my glance and quickly looked away, a flicker of unease crossing her face. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she would soon. The game had quietly begun. The quiet power of presence, the calm force of truth, the beginning of a balance that would set everything right. And I knew, deep inside, that the moment of reckoning, gentle, fair, and undeniable, was only a heartbeat away. I found her in the corner of the hall, just past the flowered arch where the photographers were snapping pictures. My sister's face was calm on the surface, but I could see it. Just a flicker of tension in her eyes. The slight pause in her laughter when she thought no one was watching. I approached slowly, letting my presence settle into the space without demanding attention. She noticed me immediately, and the color in her cheeks shifted, not from embarrassment exactly, but from recognition. Recognition that this was different, that I was different. "Can we talk for a minute?" I asked quietly, low enough that no one nearby would hear. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. We moved toward a side hallway, the laughter and music fading behind us. The air felt warmer here, but still heavy with unspoken words. I didn't think you'd come," she said finally. Her voice was softer than I expected, tentative. "I said I would," I replied evenly. "But this isn't about showing up. It's about what's been happening behind the scenes." Her eyes dropped. She fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, a habit I knew well. She had done it whenever she was nervous, whenever she avoided saying something she knew would hurt. "I didn't mean to exclude you," she began, hesitating. I didn't think it mattered. I thought you'd understand." I understood eventually. It just took me a moment longer than I hoped. I trusted you. I trusted this family. And somewhere along the way, that trust got misaligned. She swallowed, her throat tight. "I didn't think of it like that. I was excited. I was trying to make things perfect. I wasn't thinking clearly." I nodded. "I see that now. And I can see your excitement. But that's not the only truth. You made a choice without thinking about the cost, and it hurt." Her eyes glistened. "I know, and I regret it. I honestly didn't know you felt so left out. I didn't want to complicate anything." I let her words settle in the quiet hallway. No harshness, no anger, just observation, the calm weight of truth. "Complicate?" I asked softly. "This isn't about being complicated. It's about being considered, about being included, about being family." She looked down again, a single breath, heavy and deliberate. "I should have told you sooner. I see that now. I really do. I messed up." I could feel the shift, the small tremor in her composure, the realization beginning to dawn. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet unraveling of the assumptions that seemed unshakable. "It's not about punishment," I said. "You won't see me trying to make anyone look bad. This isn't about revenge in the way you're thinking. It's about recognition, about respect, about balance." Her hands dropped to her sides. She met my eyes finally, a shimmer of understanding there. "Balance," she repeated, almost like tasting the word for the first time. "Yes, balance. What was missing, what was overlooked. That's what I'm here for. Not to hurt anyone, not to humiliate, just to be seen." She took a step closer. "I never wanted to make you feel invisible. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now. I see that I wasn't. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air like a fragile crystal. I didn't rush to forgive, and I didn't have to. I simply let it exist. The quiet power of presence, of steady observation, had done more than words could have. She knew the weight of her choice, and now she could see me, not as someone powerless, not as someone excluded, but as someone whole. "I forgive you," I said carefully, "but more importantly, I want us to understand each other, not just today, not just this moment, but moving forward. I want trust restored, not forced, not demanded, but rebuilt, slowly, thoughtfully, honestly." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I want that too. I really do." For a moment, silence stretched between us. The wedding continued around us, music drifting through the walls, laughter echoing down the hall. But in our corner, the air was still, honest, full of possibility. Then she hesitated. "There's something you should know," she said, voice dropping slightly, "about the invitations, about some things I didn't realize. I think you'll understand everything differently if you hear it from me." I tilted my head, curiosity and calm determination interlacing. "Go on," I said. her lips pressed together. "I didn't want you to feel left out. There was a misunderstanding, something I didn't know would affect you. It's about what everyone thought was right, about what I thought I could do without hurting anyone. But it did hurt. And now, I need you to see it too." I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. The moment was shifting, not dramatically, not with anger or cruelty, but quietly, firmly, and irrevocably. And as I listened, I realized something important. The story I had been living, the story of exclusion, betrayal, and quiet heartbreak, was changing in real time. The narrative wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours, and it would end differently than anyone had expected. Her eyes met mine again. This time, there was no fear, only a spark of realization, a recognition that everything was not as it seemed, that truth had a way of reaching even the most carefully constructed illusions. I smiled faintly, calm, certain. The wedding, the choices, the misunderstandings, they were all threads in a larger tapestry. And now, with the quiet confrontation complete, the weave was beginning to shift. A dramatic turn had arrived, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with understanding, moral balance, and the first real step toward healing. We stood there in the quiet hallway, the sounds of the wedding still drifting through the doors behind us. My sister's eyes searched mine, hesitant but determined. She held the envelope I had discovered earlier, as if it were a key to the story we both needed to understand. "I need to tell you everything," she said, her voice steady but soft. "Not as an excuse, not to erase the hurt, but so you know why things happened the way they did." I nodded. I was ready. I had been ready for a long time. I could feel the calm determination I had built over the past hours, the quiet power of being present and aware. She took a deep breath. When I first met him, I was so excited. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just the wedding, but the way everyone would see it. I thought I could protect everyone from disappointment, including you. I thought if I made decisions quietly, it would be easier for everyone. I listened, letting her words flow over me. There was no bitterness in her tone, only honesty. It was a relief in its own way. The truth was often simpler than the stories we tell ourselves in anger. "I didn't mean to exclude you," she continued. "The invitations, the seating, even some of the planning, it wasn't meant to hurt you. I thought I was being careful, thoughtful. But I see now that I misjudged everything. I assumed you'd understand, and I was wrong. I didn't think about how it would feel to be left out of something so important." I blinked, letting the weight of her confession settle. Every betrayal carries a story beneath it, and sometimes the story is more complicated than pain alone. Misunderstanding, fear, excitement, and assumptions, any of them could make someone act in ways they don't fully comprehend. And she paused, biting her lip. "There's something else. The note, the one you found, it was meant for you, not as a shield, but as a warning. I wanted you to come, but I also wanted to protect you from feeling embarrassed if the seating chart caused awkward moments. I never imagined it would hurt you this much." I took a breath. The anger I had felt earlier didn't vanish entirely, but it softened. It wasn't resentment anymore. It was understanding. I could see the layers of thought, care, and unintended consequences tangled in her actions. "And why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "I was afraid. Afraid it would sound like an excuse. Afraid it would make the situation worse. I thought I could manage it on my own. I thought I was doing the right thing." I studied her face, the tension slowly easing from her shoulders. The room around us, filled with laughter and music, felt softer somehow. The full truth had a way of reshaping everything, even old wounds. "And now?" I asked. "Where do we go from here?" Her eyes glistened. "I don't know. That's why I wanted to speak with you alone, because the rest of the wedding, everyone's celebrating, it can't understand this, but you and I, we can make it right. Somehow." I nodded. My mind was clear. I realized that this wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about humiliation or proving a point. It was about balance, about fairness, about choosing dignity over anger. "I've thought about that," I said slowly, "and I've realized the choice isn't about revenge, not in the way people imagine it. I could react, make a scene, try to turn the tables, but that wouldn't restore anything. It wouldn't rebuild trust. It wouldn't honor what's left between us." She let out a shaky breath. "Then what do we do?" I looked at her, calm, certain. "We acknowledge the truth. We forgive when it's earned. We take what's been learned and use it to rebuild. Carefully, thoughtfully. We don't erase the hurt, but we don't let it define us either. That's the balance." Her lips trembled, and I could see relief mix with lingering guilt. "I want that too. I want it more than anything." The air between us shifted, heavy with emotion, but lightened by understanding. The story of betrayal, the quiet heartbreak, the moments of exclusion, they were no longer just wounds. They were lessons. They were reminders of the care needed to maintain trust, to value presence, to honor family. And yet, as I felt the weight of resolution settling in, I knew the choice wasn't complete. Forgiveness had not been fully given, nor had balance been fully restored. The wedding continued outside, full of celebration, while we lingered in the quiet hallway, facing the aftermath of truth. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. My sister met my gaze, waiting for the decision I hadn't yet spoken out loud. I realized then that this was the true turning point, the moment where power met morality, where emotional strength met understanding, where clarity met choice. And I had to decide, not in anger, not in haste, but deliberately how to move forward. The hallway felt still. The music from the hall faded to a gentle hum. My heart pounded quietly, not with resentment, but with anticipation. I knew that the decision I made in the next moments would set the tone for everything that followed. Our family, our relationship, and the story of how trust could be rebuilt from what had been broken. I looked at her. She looked back. The weight of guilt and hope mirrored in her eyes. The choice hovered between us, unspoken but undeniable. And in that silence, I understood one truth. The story wasn't over. Not yet. The next move, the choice between forgiveness, poetic justice, or simply letting the truth guide the path forward, was mine. And it would define everything. I stood in the quiet corner of the hall, the truth now fully revealed, the choice before me clear. I had felt the sting of exclusion, the weight of misunderstanding, the shadow of betrayal, but I also felt something new. Calm strength, clarity, and the certainty that my response would define the rest of this story. I took a slow breath. The decision I had been holding in my chest crystallized. It wasn't about revenge, not in the sense of hurting anyone. It was about balance, about fairness, about restoring dignity where it had been lost. And I chose peace. I chose understanding. I chose to let the truth itself, quietly, do its work. I looked at my sister. Her hands were folded nervously in front of her. Her eyes searched mine, waiting for the reaction she feared but secretly hoped for. I reached out, lightly touching her shoulder. "I forgive you," I said softly, And more than that, I hope we can rebuild, not erase what happened, but move forward together with honesty this time. Her lips trembled, and a single tear slid down her cheek. She nodded, relief and gratitude mixing in her gaze. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come today. I thought I could fix things alone, but I see now I couldn't have done it without you." We stood in silence for a moment, the chaos of the wedding outside fading to a gentle hum. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all of it still existed, but it felt distant, almost like a background score to a moment that mattered far more. I realized then that closure didn't require loud declarations. It didn't require confrontation or drama. It came in quiet understanding, in gestures that spoke louder than words, in the presence of someone who had weathered the storm and emerged steady and strong. I pulled the envelope from my pocket, the one that had started it all. I opened it carefully and held the folded letter inside. My sister had written it with care, the words simple and honest. She hadn't known I would read it today, but now I did. And in those lines, I saw both regret and love, fear and hope, all intertwined. I refolded the letter and returned it to her hands. "This belongs to you," I said softly, "but I want you to know it brought me clarity. Not hurt, not anger. Clarity." Her fingers brushed mine as she accepted it, and the gesture, silent and deliberate, carried more meaning than anything either of us could have spoken aloud. A bond broken by misunderstanding and choice was now quietly, carefully being repaired. Later, as the ceremony moved toward the reception, I stepped out onto the balcony for a breath of fresh air. The garden below was bathed in late afternoon light. Flowers spilled over the edges of fountains. Guests moved among the tables, laughter and chatter rising like music to the sky. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sun warm my face, and allowed myself to feel the full measure of what had happened. I had arrived alone, yes. I had carried heartbreak and betrayal into this day. But I had also walked away with something greater: understanding, dignity, and the knowledge that moral strength can achieve more than anger ever could. The quiet justice of presence, the poetry of forgiveness, the balance of truth. It was all here, in the stillness between breaths, in the warmth of the sun, in the gentle smile of my sister from across the hall. I thought of the small gestures, the soft smiles, the honest words exchanged in the hallway. They were all subtle, unassuming, yet they carried more weight than any confrontation could. I realized that sometimes the most profound victories come without spectacle. They come in the quiet moments where truth meets courage and hearts meet again in understanding. As the wedding music swelled and a group of guests began to dance below, I looked down and saw my sister's hand reaching for her mother's. The three of them, a family, realigned, not by drama, but by honesty. And in that sight, I felt my own heart settle. Peace had arrived. I took a final deep breath, letting the afternoon sun illuminate the sense of balance I had fought so quietly to restore. The story of exclusion, misunderstanding, and betrayal was now complete, not with anger, but with reflection, dignity, and love. And as I stepped back inside, merging once more with the laughter and celebration, I knew this truth with absolute certainty. Sometimes, the strongest revenge is simply being whole, simply showing up, simply choosing balance when the world expects drama. I smiled softly, letting the quiet finality of that thought sink in. And in that moment, with the music, the light, and the warmth of family surrounding me, I understood the simple, powerful truth. Presence, honesty, and moral courage could rewrite any story. And with that, I stepped forward, fully myself, into the celebration and into the rest of life unshaken, understood, and free.